Have you ever had a game annoy you so much that you had to get a stiff drink after finishing it? Maybe a whiskey sour, or a Manhattan, or just straight tequila? Because that's what happened to me after playing Duck Detective: The Secret Salami. Except I can't and don't drink alcohol, so I had to settle for a blue raspberry icy. I would argue that it's a highly sophisticated drink. A drink for kids? Nah, it's a drink for champions. And also me, I guess. You know, I don't think it's common to equate an icy to alcohol, but here we are. It's certainly not the weirdest thing I've ever said. Have you seen my streams? Hey, that girl's looking like a nice piece of sourdough. I'm smart. Hey, I'm Jen, and welcome to In One Sitting, the series that explores games that can be completed in 5 hours or less. Duck Detective: The Secret Salami is exactly what it sounds like. An absurd detective game where you play as a bread-addicted duck. Super relatable because I also love bread.
I love bread.
He's called in to solve a mystery involving a stolen lunch, but ends up discovering a deeper plot revolving around salami smuggling. And there's even a brief kidnapping? God, this description is getting weirder by the minute. I love it. I'm going to make this very clear right now before we really get started. I think this game is good. It definitely can appeal to many players, especially cozy gamers. So even though I didn't enjoy it, please keep in mind that this game is absolutely worthy of a play if detective games intrigue you. With that out of the way, I want to say that this video is going to be a little different than the others. That's because this was my first time playing a detective game and discovering that I really don't like those types of games. I promised that I thought I'd like it, but I just didn't. It felt like a massive gaming life lesson that I really should have learned at some point before the age of 31. Maybe that's me being dramatic, but that's fine. In addition to that, I refused to trust my instincts and quit early on. 10 minutes in, I realized this wasn't going to be the game for me. I enjoyed kicking over the trash cans with crumpled paper in them, but that wasn't enough to keep me from nearly pulling out my already sparse hair. That would have been really bad. But I finished the game because by God I was not about to waste the dollars I spent on the game. I literally bought it on sale for just a few bucks, so this really made no sense at all, but I've never claimed to make sense. Let's talk about why Duck Detective: The Secret Salami made me rage drive to a Shell gas station for a cold, artificially flavored drink while teaching me something along the way. Duck Detective: The Secret Salami leans into mundane problems being treated as serious things that are worth detective work. Like, whoever thought that salami would be the main source of conflict in a video game? I certainly didn't. But salami is delicious, so I'll give it a pass. The mystery is intentionally low stakes. It's not a murder mystery or something else that is darker in nature. Instead, it's about cured deli meat. Awesome. The game doesn't try to be super heavy, and even though the characters are dramatic and act like it's a crime drama, it isn't that deep. But Netflix would probably still buy up the rights to produce it into a show, only to cancel it 2 seasons in without a conclusion. This silly element is an example of the game preferring to use absurdity to make the mundane into something dramatic. The game is fully committed to the bit, at least, and that's pretty cool. Another aspect is the main character himself. He is burned out, jaded, and tired with his life situation. And again, addicted to bread.
My body wants bread.
The game doesn't explore his life situation too deeply, but the initial remarks about the whole bread thing are pretty funny and reinforce this theme. Alcohol is to bread for him as alcohol is to ices for me. The duck wants bread, and I want an icy. Pretty on par. This combined with the dramatic storytelling creates an interesting blend of noir parody and cozy mystery, which is definitely a choice. It's a choice that can be compared to mixing a salad with cake in one awful dish, but less gross. Okay, that actually doesn't make sense. The pacing of Duck Detective: The Secret Salami is quite good. Even though I didn't enjoy the gameplay, I never felt like I was wasting my time with anything, and I never felt like anything dragged on or went too quickly. I wasn't having fun, but at least the suffering was efficient. Reveals come at good intervals, and clues trickle in appropriately. The game moves between dialogue, exploration, and deduction in a quick cycle. Conversations are short and focused, preventing the game from feeling bloated. They didn't move as quickly as my ADHD-fueled thoughts do, but very little does. Like the conversations, the game itself is short and doesn't give the player time to get bored with the premise. This meant less suffering for me, which is a win. Also, the physical investigation space is small, which helps keep the pacing reasonable. Lots of people aren't fond of small spaces. I see you, claustrophobes. But this game doesn't feel too small. And in this smaller environment, the mystery unfolds in clear stages, so you roughly know where you are in the investigation for the most part. It's not quite as organized and clean as my calendar and Notion pages, but it's pretty close. The clues are handled well. Each one leads you to the next place you need to go, which is a really nice element that streamlines the game. I appreciated that the game does this and clearly chooses to respect the player's time, because from what little I know about these sorts of games, they tend to drag on. And a longer version of this game would require more ICs to get through, and I'm a college student without even a 5-figure income, so you do the math. The pacing was great, but the mechanics are where the game really lost me. And like I mentioned, this is not the game's fault. Instead, it was because I clearly don't like detective games. The core loop of Duck Detective: The Secret Salami is to collect clues through conversations and environmental elements and finish deduction statements. You fill in missing words to form phrases and sentences based on the clues you've found. You know, I feel like there's a spelling bee joke somewhere in here, but I'm too lazy to make it.
Iridocyclitis.
For those who enjoy deduction mechanics, this would feel super satisfying because you're piecing together an explanation for everything that is happening. But for me, it felt more like trial and error. I really would be a terrible, incompetent detective. Thankfully, that's not where I'm planning to go with my life. Instead of being clever and using my brain, I was just clicking options until something worked. I quite literally abandoned any form of strategic thinking, reinforcing me as the worst non-detective detective alive. I found myself guessing my way through the game because I chose story mode and had the option to do so. This literally saved me from disaster. Now, I'm not sure what that disaster would have been, but I feel it in my heart of hearts. This story mode lets you guess, meaning you can progress without fully solving the puzzle yourself. This option is great for accessibility, but it also makes it easier to brute force your way through answers. Doing this was not my proudest moment, but it's what happened, and I try not to lie. Mostly. I'm sure people who actually enjoy this genre of game won't want to do this. I can imagine detective game lovers watching me play this game. I don't think there's a better way to make someone go gray prematurely. It would be like watching a 5-year-old try to play a Dark Souls game. But thank God it had this mode, because otherwise I would have been so frustrated that I would have quit. I think I might have spiraled entirely otherwise. The detective mechanics rely on player satisfaction from figuring things out. But if that moment of realization doesn't happen, the gameplay loop loses its impact and becomes frustrating like it did for me, and results in IC purchasing. I want to emphasize that the mechanics are not poorly designed. In fact, I think they're very, very good. They just rely on gameplay I don't personally enjoy. And I recognize that this is a me issue, not a game issue. I have a lot of flaws, why not add one more to the mix? The tone of the game is really fun. The art style is colorful and playful rather than dark or gritty, and it stars a duck, which is pretty atypical. The only dark parts are the filters put on top of the game in certain sections, which is another example of the game leaning into absurdity. The duck's voice acting leans into the noir vibes. His deep voice is completely at odds with his cute appearance.
I was a freshly divorced duck, not able to pay next month's rent.
I was both confused and amused, and my brain had to do a brief restart because it took me completely by surprise. It's a great subversion of player expectations. I was not prepared for it.
You are not prepared.
This lighthearted tone stays consistent throughout the game, and it never gets too dark or heavy. Duck Detective: The Secret Salami clearly relies on dry delivery and absurdity to be a cozy mystery comedy, and it greatly succeeds at doing so. The humor wasn't bad at all. In fact, I think there are several very funny lines, but I had a hard time getting past the gameplay to appreciate it. I did think it's funny, I just couldn't muster up the laughter. Which is weird, because I tend to laugh at just about anything. My laugh standards are admittedly very, very low. Damn, girl, you smell like a beaver's anal gland. I've laughed inappropriately a lot and have probably offended people by doing so. But I didn't laugh because I was not enjoying my time with the game. Basically, I recognized that the humor was working, it just didn't land because I was already so frustrated with the gameplay. This game taught me something, but not because it was trying to. Instead, I had thoughts that resulted from me not enjoying the game and refusing to drop it early on. So there was, at the very least, a silver lining. My suffering produced wisdom and an icy trip. This is where the video really deviates from the norm of this series, but I think the learning opportunity is important. It made me think about the sunk cost fallacy in terms of gaming, something I think we all go through in some capacity. I ultimately forced myself to finish Duck Detective: The Secret Salami for content, which could be a bad or a good thing depending on how you look at it. This led me to realizing that I need to listen to myself when I feel like dropping a game. I didn't expect a Duck Detective to teach me a life lesson, but that's where we're at. So let's talk about the sunk cost fallacy and how it impacts gamers. For those who may not know, the sunk cost fallacy is when you continue something based on the time, money, or effort you already invested in that thing. It's a cognitive bias where the fear of wasting resources causes someone to commit to wasting even more of those resources, even if it's clear that abandonment would be more beneficial. For an easy example, it's staying in a relationship even if you're miserable because you've been with the person for 2 decades and you think that breaking it off would be a waste. In reality, you've already spent that time and it's gone, so why spend more time when you're unhappy? Okay, it's kind of weird that a cartoon duck made me think about this. Is that just me? In gaming, this can look like playing a game you don't like just because you spent money on it, or finishing a game because you already spent 5 hours in it and only have 2 more hours to complete it. Logically, it's pretty silly to fall into this line of thinking, but logic rarely wins in life, and we do it all the time with so many aspects of our lives. I've always known this fallacy was a huge problem for many gamers, but me continuing with this game really showcased how problematic it can be. Speaking of continuing games, I really only finished this game because I wanted and needed the content for this video. It was a sacrifice I was willing to make for the good of this channel. Okay, that's dramatic, but still. This meant I had a fairly miserable hour and a half when I should have just dropped it and played something else. I promise I'm not usually that stubborn, but it was a valuable lesson, so I don't really feel like I did waste my time, after all. But if it were a game I was just playing on my own time without any strings attached, I would absolutely feel like I wasted my time. Which leads to the main point. Gamers need to learn when to drop a game, myself included. If we aren't enjoying a game or find ourselves forcing ourselves to finish, that's a problem. I think this is a hard thing to get past, but when you really think about it, why would you spend your time playing a game you don't actually enjoy? We all have very limited hours in our lives, so we might as well spend that time doing something that fulfills us and makes us happy. That sounds sappy as hell, but it's true. I like to give an emotional damage rating to each game I play. It's reflective of how the game made me feel and how hard it hit me emotionally. It does not reflect how good I think the game is. I don't think this game is meant to really cause that much in the way of deep, profound emotion. Instead, it focuses on vibes and humor, so in my mind that emotional damage rating was always going to be low, which isn't a bad thing, to be clear. Not every game is an emotional masterpiece, nor should it be. On this scale, Duck Detective: The Secret Salami earns a 1 out of 10.
Emotional damage!
The game didn't affect me emotionally, at least not at its core. Like I said, that was expected. What I didn't expect was how it made me go out of my way to buy a little treat, and that's emotional damage in itself. My initial reaction at the end of the game was, that was a complete waste of time, but I realized that it taught me something about my own video game preferences, which is valuable and ensures I don't use my time or money on this sort of game in the future. I know to avoid these sorts of games now. Duck Detective: The Secret Salami showed me that deduction gameplay doesn't work for me. Even though the tone and humor work sometimes, it never fully landed because I didn't enjoy the gameplay. But even though I forced myself to finish it, the game wasn't a complete waste of my time. Time well used? Check. Money spent? Check. Icy purchased? Check. That's all for now. See you next time, and as always, thanks for sitting with me.